and welcome to the Switch for Good podcast. I'm Alexandra Paul with my wonderful co-host Dotsie Vaush.
Hello out there.
And we're here with Dr. Christian Gonzalez, and I'm going to read his intro, and then we're going to have a very interesting conversation that I am excited about because I have some personal questions to ask you about my family's health and my own. So Dr. Christian Gonzalez earned his Bachelor of Science at Rutgers University, where he studied environmental business economics. Although he planned to pursue dentistry, he was drawn to naturopathic medicine and a holistic approach to patient care. He then completed his Doctor of Naturopathic Medicine at the University of Bridgeport's College of Naturopathic Medicine. He followed that up with a 2-year residency position at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, which is in Philadelphia. Dr. Gonzalez believes the body has an innate ability to heal itself when given favorable conditions to thrive. He now works at a holistic and integrative medicine center in West Los Angeles in California and has just started his own podcast, Heal Thyself. Welcome, Dr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Can I have you introduce me with that everywhere I go? That was perfect.
She does travel.
Yeah. That was really good.
We'll work for naturopathic health.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like she's got some questions for her family. So.
Yeah, really cool.
You guys can train.
We're really glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I want to know, for me and for the audience, is what is naturopathic and integrative medicine? Can you start off with that?
Yeah, for sure. So we're used to the paradigm of conventional medicine where we present with a symptom and it's evaluated, and then we go home with something to essentially put a Band-Aid or cover up the symptom. That's what we're used to. And we sort of approach other medicine that way too. But at the end of the day, it's putting a Band-Aid on our health or what's going on or what our body's trying to tell us. In the naturopathic paradigm, we approach health with getting to the root cause, right? We see the symptom as the body's way of talking to us and saying, hey, look, there's a little something going on. Can you help us with this? Can you pay attention to this? Because they progress. If we ignore symptoms, put them under the rug, they progress more and more and more. So we look for the root cause. And by doing this, it can be mental, it could be emotional, it could be physical. It could be so many layers of us as human beings. So we do it on a holistic basis, not just physical presentation, but deeper stuff too.
I love that story, and I think I've said it before, but it's the short story of the fish in the pond. And there's multiple fish, and different ones of them keep popping up with a growth here, a tumor there, and we just take them out and we cut off the tumor and we put them back in. Instead of saying, what's wrong with the water? Which is, it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying, what you do is, right? Looking systemically instead of just putting Band-Aids. But why isn't that what we all do? Why haven't we been doing that since the very beginning? Because to me, logic says, what's wrong with the water?
I wish I could answer that question, but to me, it's we're set up where there's a lot of money to be made from sick care rather than preventative care. So again, we live in a paradigm where there's people who make money giving medication for something. And I think that there's a lot of common interests that are pooling into it. That's the way I see it. Because like you said, intuitively, why don't we just fix the whole thing, right? Instead of let's fix the car instead of just, look with a magnifying glass looking at the tire and going, what the heck is wrong with this tire? Instead seeing what's wrong with the other tires, how the engine is, how it works as a whole. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately that's how it is. But the nice thing is that our type of medicine, naturopathic or functional, it's really coming to a head right now, and it's becoming mainstream more because people are kind of sick of being sick.
So do you have as a naturopathic doctor, do you have the years of medical school that other doctors have?
Yeah, 4 years of medical school. I did 2 years of residency in oncology, all of the same core classes. The only way it difference, well, not even all the core classes. We do all of the same ones science-based, but then we have a full year of botanical medicine. We have 2 full years of nutrition. On average, medical schools have 23.9 hours of nutrition. That's the average. Not even a day. We have 2 years of nutrition. And then we go into different clinical counseling. So different things that approach the body as a whole. And then where it differs is when we do our rotations, we don't go into hospitals because who the heck needs a naturopath in a hospital? If I'm in the hospital, I don't want a naturopath either. My leg's falling off. I want antibiotics and painkillers. But it shifts a little bit in that sense.
Right, but I would still, I mean, just looking at the food that they feed us in hospitals, I would like a naturopath to be able to, for the care afterwards so that the problem doesn't recur.
That is something that actually I'm doing personally. I'm looking to integrate into hospitals with my food business to start changing the way we look at food in hospitals, because it is some of the worst. Even in the integrative cancer hospital, it was better than most, but still people chose to even go off campus to get fried food or fast food for like comfort food when people are healing from diseases that can't have inflammatory foods. They just had a breast surgery. Why are you having inflammatory foods? So, and that is probably one of the worst things. The places where people are supposed to heal, they have some of the worst foods.
I remember when we were sitting down for lunch a couple of months ago and we were talking about your journey. Something happened when you were studying oncology, as some events, a series of events that really made you want to look at systemic care instead of just the Band-Aid. Can you take us through that? Because I think everyone really needs to know your story to start off with.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened was I was going to be a dentist. I thought I would be a really cool orthodontist. But then, as synchronicity may have it, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was in first year of school. And when I came back from Minnesota to New Jersey, I would go to her appointments, and I was really, really put off by the lack of understanding of just basic nutrition. At the time, I wasn't really into nutrition, but basic nutrition. And they were recommending calorically dense foods like cakes or pizza or cookies. For someone I know, just on the basic level, why should you be giving that to someone
just
with
because
cancer?
They want her to gain weight?
Because they want to. But there's so many other ways to gain weight in a healthier way. And then what happened, it blew me away when the RD came in and she said the same thing.
The registered dietitian?
Yeah, the dietitian. And I was like, oh, no. That sort of set something off within, and within maybe a month, I was out and I was in naturopathic, or registered to go to naturopathic school in a few months. So starting there, it took me on this journey of understanding what I was just saying, treating things as a whole, right? Instead of just seeing, okay, we have a breast tumor, let's remove it. This is the analogy I always give for cancer patients when I talk to them. We have a field and it has weeds, and we could cut the weeds with surgery or burn them with radiation or throw chemicals at it with like chemotherapy. And then at some point, we have our scans and we go, look, everything worked. You look good. Go home and, go back to your life the way you had it. Everything's great. And what happens is nothing changes. The soil doesn't change. We don't even address the field. And unfortunately, for most people, statistically, one weed pops out, two weeds, and then all the weeds come back except more aggressive. They're not responding to any of those tactics. And then there's metastatic cancer. So that is the stuff that blows me away, because that's where we're living in oncology. We just say, scans are good, go home, go back to your life. Still eat like crap. Don't address any mental, emotional trauma. Don't detox. Find out what toxins you're exposed to, metals, your home, So it's all these things that need to be addressed. It's so multifactorial when it comes to cancer. So that's sort of where the journey came from.
So tell us what you do, since you've brought it up. Tell us what you do tell a cancer patient who is being released from the hospital and going back to their life.
Yeah, so I tell them this is when the real work starts, right? Because I can help support a cancer patient when they're going through chemotherapy or radiation or surgery. All three can be really grueling. I know everyone at this table knows someone with cancer or knows someone knows cancer. It's that common. So supporting them when they're going through it, right? So we reduce or minimize the symptoms if and when they come up. But the real work starts after, because after we have to help identify why. Why? Does any oncologist say, let's investigate why you have cancer? No, they say we need to get it out of you. But for me, the body never makes mistakes. The body creates things for particular reasons, far beyond what we understand as doctors or anyone in the healthcare industry. We just don't understand why the body does some things. I believe cancer is created by the body for a particular reason.
So cancer's not a mistake.
I don't believe cancer is a mistake at all.
You've said the tumors are protective.
I believe that.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, because when you have, let's say the example that I saw in a hairdresser who came in with tattoos, neck down, and hairdresser for 10 years, meaning that she's exposed to benzenes, formaldehydes. These are toxins that she's inhaling, touching with her hands, going through her skin. Tattoos, I have a few, but still, they're pretty toxic, especially when it comes to pollutants and heavy metals. I said, let's just test. Let's just look. We tested, and they were through the roof. Everything, even more than I expected.
The
through
metals.
the roof. The metals and the pollutants. The ones that are really identified to be in the hair care industry were through the roof. And I was surprised she didn't have bladder cancer because it's really tightly wound with bladder cancer, but she had a breast cancer. But what I'm saying is that tumor was holding in and siphoning those toxins from being released into the blood because her body was overwhelmed to do that. And we saw that because through a detox, when it was too aggressive, that tumor got bigger. But when it was less aggressive and slow and gentle, the tumor got smaller. So that's pretty crazy to see that as straight, direct evidence showing that the body was protecting her with that tumor.
So the more chemicals that she was exposed to, the bigger the tumor got. And
Exactly. And here's the thing. We have to understand the way we detox too. Her liver was poor. Her kidney was poor. She wasn't sweating. She wasn't exercising. She wasn't eating well. This is why we have to take a holistic approach to our health, because we have all these awesome routes of detoxification, but some of us have them closed up, clogged, the windows closed, and we're not taking care of ourselves, right? And that's through food. That's through exercise. The basics are so important for detoxification, and that's what we saw with her.
So sweating, going to the bathroom.
Every day.
And
exercise, eating well, taking care of your liver, focusing on, every day ask yourself, did you give love to your liver? If through a supplement,
what does that
through
mean?
food.
How do you give love to your liver?
So liver feeding foods like turmeric, cruciferous vegetables, beets, ginger. Did you eat it? Did you have a juice? Did you make a smoothie? Just something. And then supplements. Like I love glutathione for the liver in the form of liposomal that you could put under the tongue. That's really helpful. Or anything. There's different liver supporting herbs like milk thistle, for example.
Yeah.
So just asking, because I live in like the city part of LA. We're a little bit outside of it here, but still we're exposed. This is some of the worst air in the country. So giving love to our livers is really important.
So going back to our lovely hairdresser, what happened? When you said more or less, then she would like go back to work and kind of be around the chemicals
She stopped working.
Okay. And then you saw how quickly did the tumor shrink?
With a detox and her
Right.
not being at work, it shrunk significantly.
And what does a detox mean?
So depending on what the way they present. So we have to identify the causes first. For her, major part of it was occupational, right? But a lot of it was tattoos. She's not going to remove the tattoos. That would be crazy.
Okay, wait, let me ask about tattoos. You get one. I would think I get a tattoo. That's when the contaminants go in and it's over. They're continuously releasing?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
no.
It happens. I mean,
Are
like
there
I said, I have
is there
many.
better inks than others?
Not really. Not really. There's some non-toxic inks, but most of the inks that are used in general are pretty crappy. They're using like ink from like different oils that are used in industry, right? So it's not biocompatible. It's not made for our body. I'm not against them. I'm against them when you have too many, and I didn't know this when I was younger. I have them myself, so it's not like I villainize them. People have them. They have them.
She completely stopped working, which that's tough
So
for
she's
people to
taking
hear,
herself-
right? Like,
yeah.
I can't quit my job because I have cancer. I actually need my job because I have to pay for my health. I mean, it's a double-edged.
It is a double-edged, but for her, that was for her life. She had to get out of something that was consistently exposing her until she got better. You have to. And that's just not the only occupational exposure. There's people everywhere that are exposed occupationally without paying attention to it. That's one of them. But regardless, when it comes to detox, it's focusing on the routes of elimination, right? So like we just mentioned on the surface, pooping daily, right? Sweating.
We talk about that every show.
Really?
I just want to say
Oh,
that. Yes.
okay. So
Just
that's
poop in general. It just happens on the
It's so
You have to be
important.
plant-based. It just comes
Yeah,
up.
yeah, and it's so important because for women, they need to be going even more so, because what that's doing is taking out those excess estrogens from the body that are linking it to breast cancer. So gotta be every single day. Anytime a woman says, I'm not pooping, I go, uh-oh, we have to make this work for you, And it's going to be so many levels. It could be physical, dietary, mental, emotional. So it's really addressing those things. Routes of elimination, right? Giving liver love, kidney, sweating, the skin, the lungs. So making sure that you're doing things to sweat. Now, fasting is awesome. You can do fasting intermittently. We see for breast cancer, 13 hours is the magic mark between dinner and breakfast the next morning. It's protective for breast, not eating too late. That's already helping your body fast throughout the night naturally. Sometimes I tell people to do a fast of maybe 3 days. They have the Prolon fast, which is by Walter Longo. That's a 5-day fast. It's a fasting mimicking diet, and you can eat. It's just very little and some particular foods, or you can make your own and not do that one. But still, that's a really good fast. So we should all do that maybe once every quarter.
What does fasting do in terms of regulating our hormones, especially estrogen for breast cancer?
So fasting actually in the beginning lowers everything, right? Because you're in a fasting state, so your body is kind of just in, like, when your computer is really going crazy and it's just in weird default mode and you just can open one app or your phone or something.
Right.
Well, that's sort of what happens in the first few days. But when you're going through this fast, then you start rebuilding your system, right? Your immune system, especially your immune system, which is really important in fighting cancer. So around the 3rd day, the immune system starts rebuilding. It goes through a phase of something called autophagy. And then that's when all of that crap, the white blood cells that are what they call aberrant, they're just going crazy, or the tumors, it just starts breaking things down, viruses, bacteria. And then when you refeed, upon that refeeding stage, that's when you start rebuilding everything. It's sort of like you're wiping out a city that's been falling apart, and then you're rebuilding it with really good materials and healthy, clean materials. So fasting is awesome. It's hard to do a five-day fast. I did it, and sometimes it's hard for someone who's always eating, but it's very much so doable too. And think about evolutionarily, where we weren't eating all the time, all day. So so our bodies used to being in a starved or and fed state, cycling.
Right. Okay.
I wanted to ask you, so if someone goes into a hospital and they say, you need chemotherapy, how do you feel about the conventional radiation, chemo, and surgery in terms of, as a doctor, in terms of healing? What would you say to a patient before they go to if they come to you first?
Yeah, I'm not a radical naturopath where I say you can't do something. I understand both sides, particularly because I was I trained integratively. So in the hospital, everyone did one of those 3 things, or immunotherapy or something. My job was to help support them during it. But when I got out, it was a lot of the work that I said after. Remember, like looking and investigating. But I understand that there's a place for it, especially if you have a tumor that is impinging on your life, right? And a tumor will kill you. For me, it's a body's end stage of protecting itself. But if it keeps going that way, it'll kill you at some point. So I understand the place where surgery comes in and to remove the tumor because, it's impinging on your breathing or your heart. But I also understand that there's a really huge disconnect between the way conventional medicine presents your options versus what really is. I think we need to do more informed consent from the conventional side. People need to know what they're getting into. They need to know, okay, if I'm doing this chemotherapy, what's the likelihood that it's predisposing me to another cancer down the road? Because there are different therapies that predispose people to cancers down the road. So you have to say, wow, I have a 40% more chance of developing breast cancer just by taking this, by better informed consent, because a lot of hospitals don't do it at all. We need people to sit down and have a long conversation with people because this is a life decision.
Yeah, here's your risks.
Here's your risks, so people can make, and then understanding if they don't do it, there are some alternatives out there for people that, there's oncologists here that are treating alternatively. There was some in New York, there's some in Arizona, there's some in Nevada. There's some out there that do treat other ways with different tactics. I've never shadowed with them or worked with them, so I can't speak too much, but I know that there's a lot of different other tactics. I never tell someone to not do anything. I just want them to know what they're getting into better and how I can support them.
My mom had lung cancer. She had diagnosis about 3 to 4 years ago, and she had surgery. She refused to have chemo because she wanted her quality of life to be good. And the surgery was really hard on her, but it has not come back. One of the things she did was, for my birthday, I asked her to watch Forks Over Knives, because even though she doesn't eat a lot of animal products, she still had a little bit, and this thing about, I need my protein because I have cancer kind of was in her.
Right.
And so it helped a lot in her eating. She eats very well in general, aside from the little bit of butter she has on her bread. She doesn't really eat much. She doesn't eat any meat now, as far as I can see. But she started eating more cruciferous vegetables and things. What would you tell my mom so that she gets tested every 6 months? It has not come back. What would you tell her to do so that she doesn't get a recurrence?
Yeah, she should be tested for all environmental pollutants, both pesticides and heavy metals. She needs like 3 or 4 tests to see. Just from that, if you think of the pie of why cancer was caused, there's a lot of reasons, right? There's mental, emotional, there's infective causes that we know a lot of infections can cause cancer. Viruses, right? Bacteria like H. pylori. And then environmental is huge chunk of that pie, huge chunk. So if you ate that part of the pie, you'd be full because it's that much. So environmental, because think about it. Things have changed in this world, and there's a lot of environmental pollutants that we're breathing in, we're drinking, we're eating, and exposure. So, and we know that all of them, there's so many that definitively contribute to different cancers. We know one can cause thyroid cancer. We know one can cause breast cancer. One can cause lung cancer. So I would tell your mom to be evaluated for her exposures, pesticides, heavy metals, and other pollutants. That's number one. Cruciferous vegetables are amazing. One thing I always tell people is to always remember, if you can't eat them raw, to preserve the enzymes in the cruciferous vegetables, you should steam them, if you do steam them, for about 6 to 7 minutes. And then when you take them out, you add something like daikon radish or mustard seed powder, because what that's going to do is replenish those enzymes that are helping balance your hormones and detoxify. Because unfortunately, over 40% gets lost if you just steam them without replenishing it.
What about microwaving?
So microwaving you'll lose it too.
Okay, just as much or more.
Cooking.
Yeah, from the broccoli. Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that microwave, it's surprisingly so, is preserves is mushrooms. It helps preserve those nutrients that stimulate the immune system. So
when you cook them,
when you cook them in a microwave, believe it or not.
Okay. Oh, okay. As opposed to other types of cooking.
Grilling and microwaving are the best way to preserve nutrients in mushrooms.
Oh, in mushrooms.
Just mushrooms,
But
not
mushrooms.
nothing else. The only thing I came across was mushrooms. So I don't have a microwave, but if I did, and I wanted to make mushrooms really quick, I wouldn't be afraid to put them in there.
Is it true, Dr. Greger says that if you cut your cruciferous vegetables and leave them to sit for up to 40 minutes, that allows more of the cancer fighting?
Same thing. It's so if you don't want to cut them and leave them out, if you hate mustard seed powder or you hate daikon radish, just don't use those and cut them and leave them out for 40 minutes, because nature created this. When we chew it, it starts raw. When we chew it, it starts releasing those really nice enzymes that create those nutrients that are detoxifying and cancer fighting. But I can't eat raw broccoli or cauliflower. It hurts my stomach. Most people can't that I identify. So cutting it, leaving 40 minutes, or steaming it, and then using something like mustard seed or radish.
Cutting it and then cooking it.
You can cut it and cook it. As long as you leave it for 40, it doesn't matter. Then you can cook it because it's all, those nutrients are already created.
Okay. So cancer's just terrifying. I had my own quote, if you want to say, scare this summer where I have really fibrous breast tissue, and they finally all, got together and recognized, yes, it is fibrous breast tissue, and there was nothing wrong with it. Went through the whole biopsy and everything. And it was a little freaky, even though in the back of my mind, which I know is actually pretty ridiculous, but I was saying, oh, I'm fine, I'm vegan, there's no way, but obviously there's many other factors that can cause cancer, like you're bringing up, but I just had that confidence somehow, and everything was fine. But it was a little sketchy, and I noticed that when you're talking about that subject, or the people that I know that it has actually been cancer, it's some of the first things that a doctor says to them are the words that stick the most, because they're in such a fearful state. What do you say when you have to say to someone you have cancer? What do you say to them? What are some of the first things that you say that can ease them? And
yeah, so me personally, I don't diagnose people with the type of cancer. That's the oncologist's job. But it's interesting you say this. In my podcast, episode 3, the first 30 minutes were spent on telling people what to do if you're diagnosed with cancer, what questions to ask, and how to be more empowered. because imagine, knock on wood, they said you have breast cancer. You'd have a tornado. All you hear was breast cancer. You wouldn't hear anything else. It's like, in the movies when you only hear one thing and everything goes silent. Yeah. So that's sort of what happens with most people, which is why I talk about having a caregiver who's assertive, that person who's like, no, you need to tell me this. You need to tell me how, someone who's not afraid to speak up, because a lot of people in that state, they're closed up all of a sudden. And you have to know what you've been diagnosed with, and you have to know what their goals of treatment are, because you'd be surprised. Not every oncologist's goal of treatment is curative, right? I've read oncologists' notes. They have curative goals. They have palliative goals, or they have
keeping the patient comfortable.
Keeping the patient comfortable. So,
Right.
You have to ask what the goal of this is, so you can have a realistic expectation. It doesn't mean that's your truth, but you just have to know how you're being treated. What is the goal of the facility you're in, right? And just being empowered enough to ask them for, whenever you go into something, show me what my risks are for all these things, as we were talking about, right? There's something you can have an up-to-date printout or a package insert of let's say you're asked to do, or they want to do a chemotherapy on you. Ask for the package insert so you can read it, or they can explain it to you also. And you'll see what the percentage of symptoms that you can get or side effects, right? Or if you're predisposed to another cancer. Because a lot of time, unfortunately, this isn't even something that is put to the table.
We all know how cancer seems to be everywhere, and you have some pretty scary stats on what you expect in the next decade or so for it to be that. Can you?
Yeah, in the next 20 years or so. And that's coming from different global organizations. It's supposed to be 1 in 2 men, 1 in 3 women, which is crazy. Yeah. So is
this in the westernized world or all over?
In America here.
In America.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're starting to say that it's just all over now. Most industrial nations are being the ones who, and just think about it, like you have peoples in the jungle of Ecuador, they're like, what's cancer? But for us, we're in these industrialized nations where we're exposed to so much that if you think, what is our natural mode? What naturally are we supposed to evolve around? What is our environment supposed to be like? What is our community supposed to be like? What's our food supposed to be like? And ask, is that how we are right now?
It bears no resemblance.
It bears no resemblance. So can we get back to nature? What can we do, right? What slice of our life can we get to at least eat closest to nature, which comes in with like whole food stuff, right?
Well, tell us what your philosophy is about food.
Yeah, so there's so much. I believe food is one of the most potent exposures to all this crap that we're eating, which is why I'm so outspoken about things like glyphosate, which we're being exposed to through different genetically modified foods. But
what is that?
So glyphosate is a herbicide it's Roundup, and it's sprayed on genetically modified foods, plus things like wheat or oats as a desiccant. So it's a drying agent. But glyphosate was the big thing it's always a big thing, but the big headline was the Dwayne Johnson, who, I think that was his name, Dwayne Johnson, the janitor who was diagnosed with lymphoma, who sued Bayer Monsanto for $280 million and won because they didn't disclose that there's risk for cancer, because there is risk for lymphoma and leukemias when it comes to using glyphosate or Roundup.
Okay.
Working with it and then ingesting it, there's so much data that shows it's affecting our liver, it's affecting our detox, right? Remember those liver enzymes, those pathways, it's affecting that. It affects our hormones, it's inflammatory, it's nasty, it's one of our main exposures. So my philosophy on food is to not eat genetically modified foods. Eat organic as much as you can. If you can't afford it, eat the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen by the Environmental Working Group. It'll tell you which foods you need to get organic, and lessening your exposures as much as possible. Eating whole, like nature intended. What would we find, right? Like, would we find beet chips with some sugar and salt, or would we just find beets, and we cook it ourselves and eat it like that?
You mentioned the Environmental Working Group. They're an amazing organization. Are you familiar with them, Dotsie?
So probably not as much as you are.
Oh,
but I am.
I'm a big fan of theirs. So please tell me what you know of them, and we can have a chat so that our our listeners can use them as a
And what we
resource.
can learn from them, right?
Yeah, they're a powerful group for the people, and they can teach us. Well, they always every year put out the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, and that is 12 foods that need to be organic, 15 that don't need to be organic. So these are people who
If
go,
you're going to eat, yeah.
if you're going to eat organic, yeah.
And
so
is some of the difference, from what I understand, like skin and not skin? Like
Sort
if
of,
it
yeah.
has like a banana, avocado?
yeah, sort
Okay.
of. That's
Take us through it
that's
a
a
little
pattern.
bit, so-
Yeah, that's
okay.
a pattern for most. It's like the shell, like papaya, papaya actually needs to be organic because that's genetically modified. But things like watermelon or pineapple or avocado don't necessarily need to be organic. Whereas some of the highest ones are like spinach and berries and apples.
Okay.
So that it's sort of that's a rule of thumb.
Those need to be.
Yeah, but people can just print it out or have it on their phone every
Yeah.
time they go food shopping and go, oh, yeah. Does this fall? Yes or no? But Environmental Working Group is
Okay.
really good because they put out empowering information for us when it comes to food. But then on the other side, they have a whole, it's not Think Dirty, it's Skin Deep.
Yeah.
And that's for all personal care products that we use. So anytime someone's like, hey, Dr. Gonzalez, what's the best suntan lotion I can use? Well, I direct them towards there, and they can type in the suntan lotions they're using and or see the top 50 that they
That have
recommend.
the fewest chemicals in them, and also your makeup as a woman, because we
Yeah.
put makeup on our skin or a
Mhm.
lipstick on, and
Right.
we ingest that. Shampoos.
Mhm.
What should people be looking for on the backs of the labels of these cosmetics and avoid?
Yeah.
Stuff.
What are the screamers?
Well, one, stuff that you can read first and foremost, and stuff that sounds natural. That's a rule of thumb already. We're like, oh, well, coconut, oh, magnolia, oh, lavender. I know these. That's the first rule of thumb. There should never be a huge list on what you're using, on your lotions, on your shampoo. Never. There should be a handful, maybe 8, 10, 11. Fragrance is a major one that we need to watch out for because fragrance is just an umbrella term for thousands and thousands of different chemicals. So you may see 20 listed, and then the last one can be fragrance, but that can be 1,000. So,
oh wow.
so
What about fragrance free? Isn't that chemical in itself
fragrance
too?
free? Yeah, well, fragrance free, they may just use another sort of agent to keep the smell, but you never want to see fragrance because that is just the sneakiest way that companies just start putting crap in there. If you ever look at the back of anything, let's think of shampoo. Like I said, we have to be sure, and going to the Environmental Working Group and going, you type in your shampoo and it'll show you allergies, carcinogen, if it's carcinogenic, immune, if it affects your immune system, your hormones, and it'll grade it 1 to 5, I believe,
Okay.
or 1 to 10. You'll just see green, yellow, red. If your thing's coming up red, throw that out because it won't affect you if you use it one more time, 2 more times. But you have to think about this: shampoo, body wash, makeup, deodorant, home cleaning supplies. There's a cumulative toxicity, off-gassing in your home of the new couch that you bought. This is all cumulative toxicity that is reflected on tests that we can do. And then we see it on a test and we go, uh-oh, you are being exposed to a ridiculous amount of formaldehyde. We know formaldehyde causes cancer. We need to remove this now. And that's I'm passionate about it because no one talks about environmental toxicity when it comes to diseases in general, but cancer specifically. And we can test for things like glyphosate and, like I said, heavy metals too. But yeah, we need to be more empowered, and Environmental Working Group is helping empower us when it comes to makeup and personal care products.
Yeah. So our skin is our biggest organ.
Mm-hmm.
So formaldehyde, is it obviously it's dangerous if you are sniffing it or breathing it, but can it also get in through our skin?
Yeah, but breathing it is usually the number one route. And the nice thing is that's why I have all these, the NASA certified plants can help detoxify formaldehyde and benzene and other chemicals, but those are the major ones.
Certain green
Certain
plants
greens
in your
plants,
home.
yeah. So, like peace lily or snake plant or spider plant. And there's I think there's 10 or 20 out there that NASA did a study on. Put them in every room. Every hair studio or anyone who's doing hair, it should be in there. 20 of them all over the place because that'll help suck it all up. I have 2 in my room, 3 in my bedroom, so that's really important. So we need to at least have an understanding how we can lower these toxic loads for ourselves.
Once somebody has, once Dr. Campbell, Dr. T. Colin Campbell says that we all have cancer in our bodies, but our genes turn them on and off essentially. And by the way we live, we can turn them off. Do you believe that?
100%. This is epigenetics, right? So your mom had breast cancer, your grandmother had breast cancer. That means you pretty much have around a 10% chance to get breast cancer. The other 90% is up to you. And that's via epigenetics, right? This is how life influences our genes, right? If I was living in equatorial country and running around in the sand and no shirt on, well, my receptors would be different for vitamin D than if I lived in Antarctica. And that's just sun exposure. But think about like the foods. Everything is information for our body, whether it be chemicals, whether it be food, different nutrients. So through epigenetics, these nutrients help imbalance our genes. And yeah, T. Colin Campbell was right. There's a huge effect of expression of genes and our overall health. That empowers us. That should be really a really good thing for us, right? 90%. So we're all fearful of cancer, but we have 90% power of making sure it doesn't happen. And in the past, people were like, well, my mom had cancer, my grandmother had cancer, I'm most likely going to have to get it, or I'm going to have to get a prophylactic mastectomy. You see what I mean? So
and people think because the cancer, the cells started growing 10 years ago, I have no control over changing that. But we do.
We absolutely do. And there's something called DCIS where it's not necessarily, it's like stage 0 cancer. It's not even detectable as cancer. It's not classified as cancer. But there's people who have DCIS, cancerous cells within a capsule, that can disappear over the years. Or it can get more aggressive over the years. You see what I mean? So if your body is giving you that symptom of DCIS, what are you doing with it? Are you now going empowered enough to go? Because now it's not enough to just be like, I'm going to eat more healthy. I'm going to exercise. It's not enough because we're living in a world where we're exposed to these toxins. So it's really important to evaluate what your home looks like and what your blood and urine looks like.
So I want to understand this. It is then our actual genes that are turning on and off the good or bad cells, or it's what we're bringing into our body that's directing our genes to turn on and off?
Yeah, so there's think of our genes like a symphony. Everything is communicating with each other. And every time you breathe in something, you eat something, you drink something, that has an influence on the music that comes out of that symphony.
I like that.
You see what I mean? So the most beautiful music is played when we're exercising, we're eating as best as we can, we're removing all that crap out of our body, we're loving ourselves, we're loving others, we're at peace. That's when we're really aligned with health, and that's when the symphony is just magical.
Okay. You've mentioned a few times mental emotional health, right? When you were saying in the very beginning, we were talking about cancer, saying, traditional medicine doesn't go say, what are you breathing? What are you eating? And are you looking at your relationships and are they healthy? That aspect of it. I want to understand deeper how our, the stress from the emotions that we experience could be something that like severe trauma or even mild trauma, or just the stress of an everyday job that you hate or are dissatisfied with. How does that build up in our system to produce something like a cancer?
Yeah, I love that question because it's so important and it's something we overlook, mental, emotional alignment. So we know that stored trauma can have an absolute effect on your health. Just think about it on the basic level. If you have a low-grade stress over and over and over, that's telling your adrenal glands to release stress hormones over and over and over. Yeah. And we know that those stress hormones start signaling other cells to replicate faster and faster and faster. Now imagine over time those signals, remember those signals telling your genes to act a certain way, where you're going to have more receptors on all those cells to those stress hormones. It's just how your body's going to adapt until the moment you break it. And then the moment you break it, the signals change. And then your cells the DNA says, no, we don't need all those receptors for all these stress hormones because this person's not stressed anymore. So it's so important to address traumas throughout your life, whether it be childhood, whether it be young adulthood, whether it be adulthood. There's traumas that we hold in our body. And there's so many, I'm open to all understandings of cancer. And there's so many just lineages of cancer studying and beliefs where shamanism especially believes that cancer is caused by held-in emotions that aren't released. And I believe that's a huge chunk of it too. So the liberation we feel from forgiving somebody who we didn't think we could ever forgive, well, that's so important at aligning us in that state. Remember I said that aligned state where we're closest to nature, where we're at peace with ourselves and others. That's so important. If you have cancer, it's for many people take it as a blessing. It's a way to reevaluate their life. What's their relationship with their son or their husband or ex-husband or boyfriend or dad or mom?
Yeah.
And I've seen the most incredible stories from people in the hospital that I used to work with. They go back and they just change so many things about their life that they quote unquote have been doing wrong, or people who have wronged them. And it's inspiring because at the very least, let's say that wasn't even the true cause. They're at peace. It changes their perspective. And that's the most beautiful part.
This might be I don't know if this is the right question to ask, but there's certain types of cancers you were mentioning before that develop out of certain types of toxicities or whatever. Are there certain types that you see that develop from people that haven't dealt with trauma or pain or anxiety?
Dude, that's
or
a good
misery?
question. I never got that question.
I'm just so curious.
I don't even have enough training to understand, this person has this energetic change within them, therefore they manifested this cancer. That is a great question, but I don't know how to answer it.
Okay.
What I do know is that there's absolutely a mental emotional component, and it can translate to physiological changes in the body, which we can measure and which we do know can contribute to cancer. So it can be a root.
Forgiveness, meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What
Huge.
other massage? What other things do you recommend for someone who is unhappy?
Yeah. So
Hugging.
Yeah,
Serious,
absolutely not.
yeah.
Why not? But I always tell, and this is, anytime I do a podcast and they go, Dr. Gonzalez, what is your number one recommendation that you want to give us? What food?
That was
what sleep?
one of our questions. I'm
All right, we won't ask it. Here we go.
It's me time. It's time that's carved out in your day for yourself. Off the phone, away from husband, away from children, away from wife, whatever it is. It could be in the shower, it could be in the car, but where you're self-reflectant about what you're doing, who you are, what your day was like, / what was your day before like, what was your life like. Because through that self-reflection, we can change so much of our current reality, the way we perceive the world. And I recommend people to do gratitude exercise. Talk about 10 things. Doesn't matter what it is. How many of us don't even pay attention to the fact that we woke up? We don't even think about that, right? It's autopilot. Oh, I'm awake. I'm going to check my phone. I'm going to make breakfast. I'm going to make coffee. But instead I woke up. I can walk. I'm happy. I'm high vibration. Like, what are you grateful for? 10 things. The next day, 10 other things. And then doing affirmations, that whatever you want to track, what I am healthy, right? I am with a strong immune system. I am detoxifying, because your cells listen to every single word that you say. And we know through the work of Dr. Joseph Dispenza is that your brain will wire and change morphologically based on your thoughts. So if we shift our thoughts at any minute, we can change our morphology of our brain and the way it's firing and wiring, which is amazing in itself. And then doing things like meditation, journal, right? Reflect on the things that you need to let go of. Some of us may not even know what we need to let go of, but why not close your eyes, go back to the times, go back to your traumas. Love the people who gave you trauma, love yourself during the trauma. Release that crap, let it go, because it's going to shift your vibration now.
That's so important and so good for all of us to hear. I want to go back to something that I heard you say, and it's actually back to food. You mentioned papaya being GMO, and we hear also soy being a lot of GMO. Yeah. Can you point out, is all papaya GMO?
Hawaiian. At this point, yeah, Hawaiian. I don't know about the Mexican, but I know Hawaiian is GMO.
Are there certain foods that are basically are GMO and that we should avoid?
Yeah, for sure. Soy, 100,000%. And I know us in the plant-based community, soy is sort of a staple for many people. So make sure you're getting it organic. Has to be, without a doubt.
I thought it was. I thought that I'd read multiple times that the soy that they feed to humans is non-GMO. It's the one they're feeding the animals.
I have trust issues. I just don't believe that.
Okay.
I just want to know that I have a label that's ensuring that it's not genetically modified. I know what you're saying.
I do see that on the soy products that I buy. Okay.
Just pay an extra $1 and just get it organic.
So if it's organic, it means it's not GMO.
Exactly. If it's organic, it means it's not GMO. But this is what I talk about a lot too. We have and especially like this is the new trend. It's called greenwashing, right? And health foods are now going, we're healthy because we have 4 ingredients and they're clean, right? And I always call out companies or specific bars or milks or something, because now the thing is they're using the non-GMO project verified label, which is great because people are like, oh, there's no GMOs in it. Great. But most of the time, there's all the foods in there, or all the ingredients are not even GMO foods at all. So it's sort of like
it's like saying something's
fake sticker.
gluten-free.
Like
when
water
it
is
never
gluten-free.
was-
Right,
never was
gluten-free
gluten-free
water.
in the
Exactly.
Like rice, like, yeah, gluten-free. Yeah, well, right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that label just means there's no presence of genetically modified foods, right? But it doesn't mean that they're not doused in glyphosate. That's the sneaky loophole. When we have the organic label, it means that there's no genetically modified foods, plus not doused in glyphosate, plus there's no evidence of any other pesticides that are synthetic, heavy metals, sewer sludge, irradiation, fungus. So all these things can still be present on the non-GMO label. Just means one thing out of like 50.
Okay.
When the organic label will just ensure.
Can you just tell us what GMO means? Because I forget that we all forget what it means exactly.
Yeah, so they're genetically modified organisms. They're basically when food genes are manipulated such that they can be resistant to glyphosate.
That's their only, because a lot of the companies will say, no, but we add vitamin A. That's a GMO food, so we're making it healthier. But that's the main reason for a GMO is it for be able to grow faster and
for higher
cheaper.
crop
For
yields.
Money.
For higher crop yields.
Yeah.
So it's resistant to glyphosate, so you can spray all the other weeds with glyphosate.
You can spray everything
spray
with
everything.
glyphosate, and only the
Exactly.
weeds will die.
Yeah, and it's nasty. Do you want to? I had a patient who came in. She has lymphoma. She's my age, 34, and she goes. She presented with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which we know is associated with glyphosate. And usually, when I talk to people about environmental exposures, a lot of people don't know. You know, like I don't know. Maybe I was in a school with asbestos. I don't remember. But she definitively said 2 summers ago she was spraying these wildflowers to preserve them with glyphosate, with just the pack and the sprayer and no protection. And then 2 years later, she has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You're not supposed to have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at this age. You get it when you're older, if you do. But this is when I'm starting to see a trend of this, and a lot of these people have it in their urine, and it's really high, really high. I've never seen a cancer patient who doesn't have glyphosate under 50 percentile. No, I have yet to see it. I took it. I had it at like 10, and I consciously try to stay away from it.
So are these people who have maybe gardened a lot, or they've eaten a lot of not organic
food? And if you're gardening, and if your husband or you are using glyphosate, Roundup, then you have to be tested or stop using it. Just don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
It was my understanding that they banned it from Los Angeles playgrounds because of because kids and dogs and everything. But yeah.
So what you can be sure of is that if you're eating animal foods, you're eating a lot of GMO food via the animal, and you're eating a lot of glyphosate, because they are definitely not making sure our livestock are eating organic, non-GMO.
Yeah,
I mean, that is what that is, the soy and the corn.
The large
that
majority,
the animals are eating.
Yeah, and what cow is eating corn in nature? You know, they're eating grass, but this is something, the large majority of the industry is that's the food that we're giving, corn and soy, and that's transferred. And that's only one toxin. There's so many other toxins that are found in the flesh of meat that dioxin is one of the nastiest ones. It's known as one of the top most toxic pollutants out there.
And
Probably number
it's
one.
often found in the meat of animals. Why is that?
Over 90%, because it builds up in the fat tissue, right? You know, plants don't really have fat tissue, but it builds up in there, and it's been banned for years, but it's just floating around the environment.
Is it in the water?
It's in the water. It's in the animal flesh. So yeah, majority of people. So they did a study with people who were vegan versus people who had high meat, and vegan almost had negligible amounts of dioxin. But you could still get it in your water. So which is another environment. Let's take care of our water. I don't. And every time I talk like this, I don't want people to be overwhelmed, but more so empowered, right? Like.
More things to do.
More things to do to change, right?
More options.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Because some people are
knowledge.
like, oh, what do I do? How do I live? It's not a matter of that. Like, empower yourself. Like, take some tests. Get a naturopathic or functional doctor who can test you for these pollutants. Get a new water filter, reverse osmosis or a Berkey, or clean water every single day. Stay away from toxins. Like, like all those personal care products we were talking about that are nasty. So and it can happen over time. It doesn't just have to be tomorrow, but over time, your body knows what to do. It cleans it out if it stops getting the exposures.
Yeah. Well, so a grass-fed cow, because they should be fed grass, like you mentioned, that's what they naturally eat. What are they spraying on the grass to keep it growing fast?
You don't know. Okay. I mean, maybe Roundup. But let's just say at the best case scenario, a grass-fed cow has the cleanest grass in the world. It's still breathing in and drinking and eating dioxin, toxin. That's just one, right? It's still getting that in there. So regardless of organic or not, you can buy a slab of organic beef and it says USDA organic grass-fed. It has no guarantee that there's no dioxin in there.
So because the animal concentrates all the metals and things, is that why you're plant-based or vegan for health or ethical?
Ethical was a spiritual change many years ago, but it's because I said, how do we even respect each other? We can't even start with animals. We have to start by doing more and being more. And you heard that little consciousness part of me, and that's still with me because I try to see love in everything. So how do we have to start loving much more than just human beings and not seeing separatism between everything?
Yeah, it's just like Mark Bekoff says, right? Kindness begets kindness, compassion begets compassion. I feel like if we can teach our children to be kind to what most people consider the least of us would be animals, right? Then how are they going to treat their fellow beings if they learn to be kind to a fish or a frog or a bee,
That's what James Aspe said on Logan Paul's podcast, which is one of the most listened to in the world.
Yeah.
I just heard it and I was so impressed because I heard bits and pieces of him, but I was so impressed because it was a near perfect podcast from his part, the way he answered every question, because it was not dogmatic and it was very empowering. And he was very understanding of people being like, I don't know, on the podcast, I can't stop eating meat. But he did raise that. It's if you have children and you're teaching them compassion from day one, right? Like, this is a fish. They're our friends, right? Like, this is part of you. This is your brother or your sister. And then chickens and then meat and cows. And the children inherently don't want to hurt these things in the first place. At some point, there's the disconnect between real, true life and then, the way we see things. At some point it happened. I used to eat meat,
Well, they don't even call it chicken, actually they call chicken, but pork, they don't call pigs.
Yeah.
Pigs. They say you're eating pork and
exactly.
ham and beef,
right? Not cow.
Meat.
Here's your large serving of cow for dinner. It's a little weird, right? So, but there's such a weird disconnect between what inherently is our truth and what goes to our plate. And I believe that it's just that's what it is. And to me, there's no nutritional need to have to eat meat. There's no nutritional need, And even B12 we were supposed to have it through nature, but we've adulterated our soil and it's affected.
We wash
so
our
much.
vegetables a lot, so we don't get the B12 that normally would be in the soil, right?
Yeah. But think about, again, humanity, nature, like the way we were many years ago. It was very different. But that's just the way I approach things. But, I feel good. I'm healthy. And you both look really healthy and thriving and glowing. So we're doing
Everybody
something
looks good
right.
over here if you're watching.
Well, I think eating plant-based is something that is in our control, and eating organic, it sounds like. Going to the environmentalworkinggroup.org is the website to see what cosmetics and cleaning products and other chemicals that you might be surrounding yourself with. It's really important. Sunscreens. They have a really good thing on
everything
sunscreens.
That you're slathering all over your body.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
Oh, man, I'm everywhere right now.
I know you are. Tell us
just
about that.
Overextending myself, but it's such a good thing
Thank you.
because I want to teach people, right? And whatever platforms I can use to do that and empower people. That's the most important part, right? You give them the knowledge and then they have the empowerment. What they do is based on them. That's free will. You do whatever you want. But maybe they won't make a change tomorrow. But what about a year from now when they go, oh, man, I remember Dr. Gonzalez said something really crazy on that podcast that I heard a year ago. Boom, ding, let me change that, right? So you can find me on Instagram, and that's at DOCTOR, Dr.G_. And I'm usually putting a lot of content, just empowering stuff.
Fantastic
from
stuff.
food, from
Check it out.
consciousness, just everything that can be there. And then I started my own podcast, which is really like my baby because I'm able to just be me in front of the camera, not be super professional, which is so liberating because I hate
I
being
bet.
like, oh, hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Gonzalez again. Like,
Well, you're professional now. Is this your professional self?
this
or
is the
you're-
most professional I'll be. Yeah, this is the most professional. But like, I love to let my personality out. So that enables me to do that too. So
But you give a lot of very good information on your
of
podcast.
course, yeah, I try. So we give knowledge bomb section where I rant about something like fluoride, glyphosate, what to do with cancer, and then we'll do product reviews. So I'll talk about greenwashing bars or almond milks or oatmeal, which I did a few weeks ago. So, and then usually I have some guests coming on. So whenever you guys are in Los Angeles, I want you both on there. but yeah, I just whatever guest because I want high vibe people who whatever it is, it can be someone, a construction worker who has something to say in the best story I've ever heard. That's who I'm bringing in, like powerful people who wake us up as viewers and listeners.
Yeah. People like to have things that they can eat, snacks that they can eat quick. And in your episode 1, I loved the bad bars and good bars. And you still have to listen to his full episode, you guys, because there's much, much more. I'm not totally pilfering from it, but a little bit. What's a really bad snack bar and what's a really good one?
Okay. RX bar is one of my worst ones.
RX bar.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one that does tout. We only have 6 ingredients, right? But
Is
it's
that the
got
one with all the egg whites?
They're the ones with the greenwashing. That's why I don't like them because they do nothing to make sure that their ingredients are organic, but they put it out there to us that it is so clean. It's the cleanest of the clean. We only use 3 egg whites, 5 almonds, 2 dates. But what happens is all of those foods are sprayed, right? The eggs are conventional, which are already a big alarm. And then they're putting it out there and packaging it as, give it to your kids. It's healthy. It's not. And one's not going to kill you, but I know people who eat it every day for breakfast, every day for years. Then what happens if we take those tests on them, right? Who knows with their exposures, how they're affected by that. But that chips away at your health. One of my best ones is the Go Macro one. I like the Go Macro one.
Oh, yeah.
They do a good job.
I've never had it. But
Yeah, they're pretty tasty. They have different flavors. They do a good job because they have all of these labels that ensure us that it's clean ingredients. They actually take extra steps past organic because they're a very wholesome company. But they do a good job with that too. So that's one for example.
Thank you.
I go over some more, but
Yeah.
we
They have
all
to
want-
listen.
Yeah,
We gotta
but
send
they
them to the
have listen.
podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate
Fabulous
it.
stuff.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
much information.
Yeah, I'm pretty honored and blessed to be working with you both and just Switch for Good in general because as I was approached, Dustin, he's a volleyball player out there. He was
Dustin Watton, what's
Dustin
up?
Watton, he's the man. And him and I were talking a lot and he's like, I'm going to connect you with this whole group that you need to. And then I go, what? And then we had lunch and I was like, I need to be involved because we didn't even get to talk about dairy, but I have so much to say about
You'll be back, right?
dairy. Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, dairy is the number one thing that I want to talk about later. So next time, let's do the whole thing
Okay,
on
good.
dairy.
Pod 2
All right,
with
great.
Dr. G.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right. Bye, you guys. Till next time.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.